Greetings, Internet faithful. I am some guy named Rob from On Your Marks Wrestling, and welcome to Rob Recaps Impact Wrestling? Wait a minute. No. We can't do it like this. We can't do Impact like this. Hold on. Just 1 second. Okay, this seems like a much more appropriate way to do Impact Wrestling. Greetings, Internet faithful. I am some guy named Rob, and this is Rob Recaps Impact Wrestling. Um, Funny thing, I've recently added the Fight Network to my cable TV package, which means that I now have Impact Wrestling as well as Smash Wrestling. Don't expect a major recap of Smash Wrestling, other than maybe an impromptu little thing about things I kind of appreciate, things that I kind of find oddly charming about Smash Wrestling. But I do get to see Impact on a weekly basis, so now I can actually do some recaps on it. We're heading into the Redemption pay per view. I actually had meant to do a recap of this last week, but things just kind of happened. I was actually going to pick up the slack for Lee because Lee was feeling really, really under the weather last week, so I was going to kind of take charge and pick things up where he had left them off, but unfortunately, circumstances beyond my control led me to not being able to put it out in a reasonable amount of time. So I just said, you know what, I'll chalk this up to the dog ate my homework. I never really promised an Impact Wrestling type of review, so there you go. We open up Impact with a video highlight package, essentially the same one that was run last week with Austin Aries, highlighting how the main event for Redemption has been changed to Austin Aries versus Phoenix versus Pentagon Jr. for the World Championship. There's a little bit of a recap with the Alberto El Patron situation. And pretty much if you saw it last week, you've seen it this week. Now, I would imagine that because these were all taped segments. This episode was taped, oddly enough, like way back in, I think, January. So, kudos to Impact Wrestling for keeping things together as well as they have, considering that between January when these TV tapings happened and now you could have had so many injuries happen, you could have had so many things go wrong, and for this to happen right before, literally like 8 days, 9 days before a pay-per-view, to have the main event change so dramatically, they're gonna, they have to do a lot of a switching up of the main event scene and a lot of the matches, and of course a lot of the TV tapings as a result. So I have to say it's pretty amazing the product that they've been able to put out in spite of all the things that have been going on. We get to in-ring action as Falaba and Kira Hogan take on the team of Braxton Sutter and the Undead Bride Su Yung. Kira Hogan looks really good in this match. This is the first time I've ever seen her. I've never really this is really me watching Impact for the first time in a long, long time. I had access to Impact for a little while, very, very short time, and I kind of followed it for a bit. And then for the longest time, I did not have the ability to watch it. I kind of followed it a little bit on the internet, watching, results and a little bit of freebie matches here and there that would be posted. But ever since Anthem took over, this is really my first exposure to it. Although I have watched it for the past couple of weeks, it's been interesting to kind of see them go back to more of an indie wrestling type of motif and aesthetic. I mean, one is obviously cost cutting measures. The other is going to be, just to kind of differentiate their product from what used to be the old Impact Wrestling, the old TNA Wrestling, which quite honestly at times could be really, really terrible in spite of all the star power that they used to have. They really could put out a very slipshod product from time to time. All this to say, the match itself was okay. The best parts of it were when Kira Hogan was in the match. Although Falaba is charismatic, and he moves around pretty well for a really big guy. Braxton Sutter he's a guy. He's in the ring. He takes up space. He does stuff. But really, the stars of the show were really Kira Hogan and Su Yung. Match ends when a referee is distracted. Su Yung comes in with a palm strike and then hits her finisher. It's basically an airplane spin into a Michinoku driver for the 3 count. After the match, out comes Ali, the Knockouts champion, and she and Su Yung brawl in the aisle for about a good couple of minutes, and they'll be facing each other at the Redemption pay-per-view. And because I would imagine they've had to do a lot of surgery on the recent episodes of the TV tapings because of Alberto El Patron no longer being with the company, we cut to a lot of in and out of ring backstage promo package, pre-taped interview type segments. The first one is with LAX. They're talking about their tag team title defense against Eli Drake and Scott Steiner. Konnan basically tells the boys in LAX not to worry about it too much. Scott Steiner's not really all that reliable, and chances are just as good that he's going to turn on Eli Drake as he would attack them in the match. We then cut to a backstage segment with Congo Kong and his manager, and I'm going to look this up, Jimmy Jacobs. I really like Jimmy Jacobs. He's got a certain charisma about him. He looks like he's got some star power, so I'm gonna be kind of keeping my eye on him. They're gonna talk. They're talking about their match coming up against Johnny Impact, formerly Johnny. Well, I mean, he's been Johnny everything. Johnny Nitro, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, now Johnny Impact. Jimmy Jacobs calls him Johnny Gorgeous. I remember actually watching him compete on Tough Enough long time ago, competing on Tough Enough. So it's actually good to see that he's managed to raise his star caliber a little bit. But it's kind of funny that he always goes by Johnny because he can't remember to answer to any other name, which is kind of fun. I remember on Tough Enough, he was a little bit of a meathead from what I remember. So that's kind of comical to me. We then cut to an OVE package with Sami Callihan, where they're talking about everything that's been going on with Eddie Edwards and OVE. Sami Callihan, the whole smashing with the baseball bat, the whole throwing the towel at WrestleCon when they were doing Impact versus Lucha Underground. And basically, it's a hype package for their match at Redemption. We then go to a... wow. We go to a match from the Global Wrestling Network, the GWN network, which is sort of what they're pushing for they're kind of their version of the WWE network where they have their archives and stuff. And they put it's a match from 2000. I'm not sure if they said 2009. Between a shockingly young Bobby Roode with the long hair and Kurt Angle, who Wow, it's hard to remember a time when Kurt Angle looked that disheveled and feeble and old. And he was the world champion. He's defending the world title in this match. Very good match, actually. I really like the ending. Tons of counters between like a crossface crippler and the ankle lock and various roll-ups and escapes and counters out of those two maneuvers. Counters out of the angle, in and out of the angle slam. Kurt gets one final angle slam, uses the top rope for leverage because he's the heel. Referee doesn't see it because Kurt Angle's the heel champion who needs to retain. The 3 count happens, and, well, I mean, obviously this happened years ago, but it was a pretty entertaining match. I think it was a great way to fill some time, considering probably, again, all the chop jobs that they had to do to kind of work around the fact that they fired one of their major talents going into a pay-per-view in, like, 5 days? We move from the past to the present as we get KM coming out to the ring. KM doing his best Scott Hall / Razor Ramon sort of gliding stride kind of with the arms as he makes his way to the ring. Does a lot of laughing. I don't know what his character is supposed to be exactly. I still haven't sussed him out. He was the one who was doing the bullying of Richard Justice and Falaba and all those a couple weeks ago, and was in the 6-man tag with Tyrus the week before, or I should say last week. He comes to the ring and he calls himself an innovator. So he innovates a new type of match, the KM Open Challenge, as he calls it. And he starts listing off, rather comically, I might add, a whole lot of world-famous jobbers, like the Brooklyn Brawler, Abe Knuckleball Schwartz, I think, was in there, Barry Horowitz, guys who are not really known for winning matches, and of course, he invites any one of those types of wrestlers of those caliber to make their way to the ring. Instead, he gets Brian Cage. Obviously, Brian Cage seems to think that he fits the bill as a very low level enhancement talent. I mean, I'll put a graphic up on screen and you can see the guy's clearly a fat slob who is completely out of shape and has absolutely no business being in any type of tight spandex form fitting type of outfit. Okay, that joke fell about as flat as Cam's jokes. The long and the short, Cage comes out. Cam gets back on the mic, tries to weasel his way out of the ring. As he's taking a powder, Cage catches him. Bell rings. Cage knocks him around for a few minutes before hitting him with a finisher that the announcers comically say is, "Wow, that's just like an F5." Because it's totally an F5, except it's done at about 3/4 speed and looks like it has about half the impact because it wasn't done as quick. So yeah, I guess in that regard, it kind of looks like an F5 because it wasn't executed as well as it should have been, or at nearly the right speed. But yeah, so Brian Cage picks up the win over KM. We then go to Congo Kong versus Johnny. Pick a name, just pick one. It doesn't matter. I think they name all of his names during this match. The commentators, I think they do name Johnny Mundo. I think they do call him Johnny Impact. The only thing they don't do is call him Johnny Wrestling, which of course is part of Johnny Gargano's gimmick in NXT. But other than that, I mean, just tack on Johnny something or other that he's used over the years, and chances are that they mentioned it on commentary. The match itself is nothing spectacular. The whole idea was that Johnny Impact was going to be using his parkour type of skills to kind of use his speed and agility to get around Congo Kong. Didn't really work. The end of the match was probably as telegraphed as you could ever get with a match. It was absolutely ridiculous. So you have the two of the men on the outside. Congo Kong goes to throw Johnny Impact into the steel steps. Johnny hops over the steps, which I thought was clever, and then he stares Congo Kong in the face and telegraphs that he's going to run and jump off of the stairs so that way he can, come and hit him with maybe a double axe handle or a flying forearm or something like that. And Congo Kong just basically knocks him out of the sky. Then he throws him into the steps. Then he does a cannonball on him on the steps. And then because Congo Kong is the heel and he has to show that he's not out there for a competitive match. He's just out there to hurt Johnny. Throws the ref into the barricade, which was actually the best bump of the match. And then we have Congo Kong and his manager. They pick up the steel ring steps. They kind of put them into the ropes. And what they do from there is they just basically lawn dart Johnny Impact into the steel steps that are kind of wedged in the ropes. Johnny is bleeding from the mouth, or they don't know where. It's the implication is that he busted his nose and made him ugly, which was sort of the whole point of everything. So yeah, that happened. We then come back from the break. Johnny is being tended to by the medical staff backstage. This leads into a promo of the Ali Su Young feud as it's been so far. Another promo package, we get Eli Drake talking about his match coming up for the Tag Team Championship at Redemption. Scott Steiner joins in on the mic. They kind of have a mutual admiration society thing going, which was kind of awkward. Wasn't nearly as good as one would imagine. But then again, you never know what you're going to get when you put Scott Steiner on a microphone, whether it's TV taped or not. So I guess it's about as good as you could have expected, all things considered. We then take you to a repeat of the WrestleCon match, the Lucha Underground versus Impact match, which ended up being a triple threat match of Phoenix versus Pentagon Jr. versus Austin Aries in a non-title match. The match itself was actually quite entertaining. If you watched it on Twitch TV, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've seen the whole thing. For those of you who didn't see it, and this is the first time, Pentagon and Phoenix are actually really a lot of fun to watch. Actually, although there was a little bit of a thing at the beginning of the match that I thought was way too scripted. It just came off as very, very convoluted and scripted. Like it just seemed like a Cirque du Soleil routine versus a wrestling match. And I know that a lot of the lucha style, lucha underground, it's very big on showmanship and acrobatics and stuff like that. But this one took it a little bit too far. It took me out of the match. I really couldn't keep myself invested in it. But ultimately, the finish of it was great. I love Phoenix's. Pentagon, the Pentagon driver. I love that finishing maneuver. That's great. So that finisher's money. I actually think that now that it's going to be an official triple threat match, it's going to be for a world title. I have a feeling that they're going to build on that and turn it into something even bigger. So that should be fun at Redemption. So yeah, that's Rob Recap's Redemption. Overall, I mean, look, the production value of Impact Now versus Impact of when you had guys like Sting and Jeff Hardy and the Dudleys, the whole Aces and Eights thing. You had, I mean, they have less money to work with. They have less resources to work with. They have less talent to work with. But they're putting on a pretty good job. As I said, kudos to the writing staff. They taped a lot of these episodes that you've been seeing over the past few weeks back in mid-January. They turned things from mid-January into TV that you're watching in mid-April and made it work. So, my hat's off to them. I can look over some of the flaws. One of the things, though, in terms of production that drives me absolutely crazy about Impact Wrestling that I've noticed over the last 3 weeks as I've been watching this, they do absolutely nothing to differentiate what is a replay. There's no, like, just give me like a little lower third that says replay. One little thing, top of the screen, replay. Do it as a split screen. Do something to let me know that this is not live footage. They don't do it. They don't even properly differentiate it when they're doing the announcing of it. So that really kind of bothers me. Other than that, I'll give them a pass for now. I do expect things to get better as Anthem is kind of taking things over and kind of shuffling the cabinet a little and figuring out what they have and what they can do. I do expect things to get better. But we'll see what happens with the Redemption pay-per-view. Obviously, they're going to be able to start fresh with a lot of new storylines because they're coming out of a pay-per-view. They now know who's on their roster. They're no longer having to tap dance around the fact that somebody got fired. Hopefully they don't have way too much footage in the can that they still have to butcher up for the next few weeks and they can kind of insert other stuff in there. But we'll see where it goes. And until then, we'll see you next week with our recap of Monday Night Raw. Take it easy.